Thank you and shout out to FC Playthroughs for all cutscene and gameplay footage used in this video. Check out their channel here on youtube.com. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 is scheduled to hit theaters in less than a year from now. Although the hype train won't truly begin until the first official trailer drops, that hasn't stopped fans from asking questions about the film, like will Sonamy be canon, or who will be the next post-credit character. Arguably the most important question is whether the film will feature time travel. That's because this notoriously unwieldy plot device could have massive implications for the story and the characters in the fourth movie and beyond. So, what's the evidence that time travel will be part of the fourth film's plot? It can't just be that it will be based on Sonic's CD, where the player needs to travel through the past, present, and future of several stages in order to win. After all, these films take many creative liberties with their source material, especially the classic era games, which don't really have in-depth plots to begin with. So CD's time travel premise could be left on the cutting room floor. With that said, however, there are two other pieces of evidence that said premise will be in the film. The first is one of the third film's post-credit scenes, where Metal Sonic appears via a flash of lightning, kneeling in a crackling cloud of smoke. This is obviously a reference to 1984's The Terminator, where a cyborg is sent back in time to kill Sarah Connor, whose future child will one day save mankind from an AI apocalypse. So this scene suggests that, like the T-101, Metal Sonic has been sent back in time to kill the real Sonic. The second piece of evidence is actor Jim Carrey's voiceover in the film's teaser trailer.
You think your world is safe, but your time is about to run out.
The word choice here seems way too intentional to be a coincidence. But what else can we predict about the fourth film's story if it does in fact have time travel? What likely effect would this plot device have on certain characters? Well, the character who could be the most impacted is Dr. Eggman. The last time we saw the Mad Doctor, he and Shadow sacrificed themselves to stop the malfunctioning Eclipse Cannon from destroying Earth. This is one of, if not the biggest reason many fans hope Movie 4 will have time travel. It could allow a fan-favorite character, or at least a variation of him, we'll talk about that in a minute, to return and cause more mayhem for Team Sonic. This time, many fans predict that said mayhem will involve a dystopian or bad future, where Eggman takes over the world a la 2017's Sonic Forces, or the SatAM cartoon from the 90s. But how exactly would any of this happen? There are at least two possibilities, both of which depend on who Jim Carrey will play in the fourth installment. That might sound odd. Who else would Carrey play other than Eggman, you say, but just follow along. Let's assume Carrey will, as before, play everyone's favorite giant talking egg. How could Eggman himself return if he died in a powerful explosion? The answer may lie in Shadow. In the third film, the Eclipse Cannon was powered with Shadow's chaos energy. The theory that many fans have is that this chaos-fueled explosion sent Eggman and Shadow into the future instead of killing them. Even before it was confirmed that Carrey was returning for the fourth film, there was reason to believe that Eggman survived the explosion since the third film's other post-credit scene reveals that Shadow survived. What isn't likely, however, is that either character was sent into the future. That's because there's no hard evidence that Shadow can use his chaos energy to travel through time. He can use his power to teleport in the present, but not into the past or future. Now, in some of the games, Shadow's chaos control move can temporarily slow down or freeze time, but that's really it. So how is it that Shadow and therefore Eggman survived if they weren't sent into the future? Answer: Shadow's chaos energy allows him to teleport. So what's more likely is that the explosion teleported Shadow and Eggman to somewhere else in the present, likely back on Earth. Afterwards, the latter can get back to business as usual, building metal and taking further steps to create the Eggman Empire. The scenario allows for a timeline where the aforementioned bad future exists, and for Eggman to eventually discover a method of time travel, which we'll also discuss later. To me, this is the most likely route the film will take with Eggman. It's not overly complicated or contrived, and it's consistent with the pre-established lore of this universe. But there's another possibility. What if Carrey isn't playing Eggman, or at least doesn't play the original version of him? For some time now, a few fans have speculated that one specific character from the games could replace Eggman as the main villain in Movie 4. I'll be referring to this character as Eggman Negative, which isn't his actual name, but no. Anyway, debuting in 2005's Sonic Rush, Negative is Eggman's descendant from 200 years into the future, who also lives in a parallel dimension somehow. A genius scientist, Negative regularly schemes to take over the universe with his robot armies. However, he always fails because of his own hubris and/or is repeatedly undermined by Sonic and his friends. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar? Anyway, the theory goes that Carey could play Negative in movie 4. He could either A. lead the future Eggman Empire himself, build Metal, and send him into the past to kill Sonic, B. do the same thing, but be from a separate dimension, or C. travel back in time to somehow save Eggman from the explosion so that, like in Rush, the two can work together at fighting Sonic and friends. Out of the many theories about movie 4, this is easily my least favorite because it just doesn't make sense to bring Negative into the Sonic Cinematic Universe, SCU for short. First, Negative isn't popular or well-known enough, even for a secondary Sonic villain. Black Doom, Mephiles the Dark, the Babylon Rogues, and even Infinite are way more popular and widely recognized than Negative. Since the movies are designed to appeal to outsiders as well as Sonic fans, they have so far adapted only the most famous characters from the games, and there's no reason to believe this pattern won't continue. Regardless of how famous he is, some fans insist that Negative would still be a good replacement for Eggman because of how the latter's story ended in the third film. When Eggman sacrificed himself, he was finally a hero after spending the past films terrorizing Team Sonic, Green Hills, and the wider world. But if he were to somehow survive and go back to his evil schemes, that sacrifice would be rendered meaningless. Therefore, some argue that if Carey played Negative instead, we'd get all Eggman's fun villainy without undermining movie 3's ending. But if Eggman shouldn't come back because his arc in movie 3 was so satisfying, what's the point of bringing in a brand new character if they're just going to have the same actor, the same look, and the same villainous playbook as the Mad Doctor? Negative is just too redundant of a character to adapt. He's not distinct enough from Eggman to justify bringing him to the big screen. Some might say that this is an overgeneralization of Negative. They'll argue that while he does have the same look and modus operandi as Eggman, he doesn't have the same goals or personality. Eggman wants to use his robots to rule the world, while Negative wants to use his to destroy it. Where Eggman is loud, boorish, and immature, Negative is quiet, polite, and well-mannered, masking his dark, psychotic lust for chaos and anarchy. Negative doesn't care if he goes down, so long as the world goes down with him. Wouldn't it be so interesting to see that contrast in the movies? It would, if that wasn't literally already done in movie 3. We already had a more sinister relative of Eggman in Gerald Robotnik. He was also more calculating and reserved than his grandson. He was also willing to die if it meant he could set the world on fire. He also teamed up with Eggman to maximize his chances at success. Even if you were to argue that Negative is not just Eggman with an unflattering color invert, he would certainly be a rehash of Gerald if he was adapted into the movies, especially if Carey was going to play him. On that note, cold, composed, and eerie is not why you hire Jim Carrey. You hire Jim Carrey for ham and slapstick. You hire him because he's loud, goofy, and exuberant. He's known for playing expressive, graceless clowns, and that's why he plays this oafish man-child so well. It's also why the SCU version of Gerald doesn't work as well as his game counterpart. Because he's played by an actor who's mainly known for doing any and everything to make people laugh, Gerald's character had to bend to that style of performance. Consequently, this calm and collected sociopath ends up being too goofy and unthreatening to take seriously as a villain. The same problem would likely happen with Negative. Finally, let's go back to Eggman's sacrifice for a moment. While you could certainly argue that Eggman returning to villainy cheapens movie 3's ending, others have interpreted his sacrifice differently. They counter that while Eggman did save the Earth, that doesn't necessarily mean he changed as a person. Remember, he outright says the reason he's saving the world.
Agent Stone, if I can't rule the world, I might as well save it for the one and only person who ever cared about me.
Agent Stone isn't the only person Eggman addressed in his farewell. He also called out the other 8 billion people on the planet, saying,
So, I guess there's only one thing left to say. It's been a real drag. Thanks for nothing.
There's a reason why Eggman said if he can't rule the world, he'll save it for his henchmen's sake. Stone is the only human being he doesn't despise. For the past 3 films, Eggman has been defined by 3 interdependent traits: misanthropy, narcissism, and a love for machines. He hates humans because they've repeatedly let him down. By contrast, he loves machines because they do what they're told and don't question or oppose him. And because he believes he's the smartest person on Earth, he thinks the entire world would operate better as his own mechanized prison, where us mere parasites only exist to serve him and his machines.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right?
When Eggman admits that Stone is the reason he's saving the planet while verbally flipping off the rest of humanity, it shows he's still a misanthrope that, but for the current situation, wants to impose his rule on everyone. Furthermore, the idea that Eggman would save humanity while also wanting to enslave it is not only outright confirmed in the 3rd film,
We can't annihilate the Earth! By combining our genius, we can rule humanity.
but is perfectly in line with his game counterpart. There are several examples in the games where Eggman puts aside his hatred for Sonic to team up with him to save the world. Not because he cares about the well-being of other living things, but because you can't rule something with an iron fist if it's gone. In fact, there's evidence that movie Eggman would like to rule the world even from beyond the grave. In the prequel comic for movie 2, Agent Stone follows his boss's written manifesto, which is basically a contingency plan on how to move forward with the Eggman Empire in the event the Doctor is not around. So, if Eggman still believed that society would function better with him as its supreme tech bro ruler, if he saved the planet for Stone's sake only, and if he left behind a backup plan on how to implement his twisted, treat people like machines worldview when he's gone, then it's quite plausible that he'd continue to be a villain if he got another chance at life. This decision wouldn't necessarily clash with his sacrifice, and therefore he wouldn't need to be replaced by Negative. So yeah, Negative's chances of showing up in the films via time travel or dimension hopping are slim to none. Also, considering how he's Eggman's descendant, which would require the latter doing a very specific act with someone of the opposite sex, it would be entertaining to see how that writing decision would go over with Stobotnik fans. Because if there's any part of the Sonic fandom known for being calm and open-minded, it's shippers. Alright, enough about Eggman and whoever will rule the bad future. What other characters could be impacted by time travel? Well, there's Silver the Hedgehog. He's another reason fans hope time travel is part of the 4th film's plot. Once it's confirmed possible in the SCU, it may only be a matter of time before Silver arrives on the big screen. Director Jeff Fowler has stated that he's aware that Silver fans want to see their boy in the films, and that
We'll take it into consideration for sure.
as discussed in a previous video, Silver fans have been yearning for him to get any mainstream attention after 20 years of Sonic teams sidelining him in game after game. If Silver appears in the SCU and his character is well adapted, then he might become more popular, which could lead to Sega giving him a bigger spotlight in future games. So, assuming time travel is possible in the SCU and Silver makes the cut to be adapted, when will he show up? It's safe to assume it won't be in movie 4. This would be for the same reason you didn't see Amy Rose or Rouge the Bat in movie 3's main plot, even though both were in the game that the film was based on. You want to avoid cast bloat, since too many newcomers would take away crucial screen time from older characters as well as from each other. The movies have so far avoided this problem by severely limiting which game characters make it to the big screen, usually by introducing 1 or 2 new characters per installment. For this reason, Silver shouldn't be part of movie 4 beyond one of its post-credit scenes, because not only will it have 2 heavyweight characters with much longer histories than him, but because his story cannot be well incorporated into the plot. Silver's debut game, Sonic 06, is notorious for many reasons. One of them is its story, which is so bloated, confusing, and poorly executed that it's literally retconned by its own ending. Turning that train wreck into a passable film script is going to be a Herculean task, and it shouldn't be further complicated by trying to mix it in with the story of another mainline game. I will say this though, I always thought it'd be appropriate to make an 06 adaptation the final entry in the film series, because that game features the collapse of all time and space, as well as Sonic's death and resurrection, but that's a topic for another day. So now that we've discussed which characters could arrive in the movies thanks to time travel, let's talk about how time travel will actually work. How will the characters visit the past, present, and future? In the mainline games, the 2 most famous objects capable of time travel are the Chaos Emeralds, specifically how they operate in 06, and the Time Stones from CD. Let's discuss the Chaos Emeralds first. In '06, time travel is possible via dual chaos control. This requires at least two people simultaneously summoning the power of at least two emeralds to conjure a portal that lets them travel through time. Since they already exist in the SCU and were a prominent part of the teaser trailer, the emeralds are the most likely pick for the go-to time travel device. There's just one problem. Where are the Chaos Emeralds now? Last time we saw them, Sonic and Shadow used them to go super and stop the Eclipse Cannon from firing at Earth. But it's not explained what happened to them afterwards. Maybe the Eclipse Cannon explosion teleported and scattered the emeralds across the world, which is often what happens after they've been used in the games. Maybe someone, say Eggman or Metal Sonic, finds them and somehow figures out that they could be used for time travel. Also, remember that once all 7 emeralds are found together, they'll combine into the Master Emerald, which has the power to turn the dystopian thought of an Eggman empire into a reality. Need we remember how the Mad Doctor almost destroyed an entire town with the all-powerful gem? So maybe Team Sonic and Amy will race across the world to find all of the Chaos Emeralds before Metal does. Perhaps each time they find 2 emeralds, it allows 2 people, say Sonic and Amy, to travel into the past or future. But let's assume that the Chaos Emeralds aren't the object used to time travel. Maybe they inexplicably went back inside of the Master Emerald off-screen, like what happened in between movie 2 and 3. What would be the go-to object instead? In CD, the Time Stones are 7 mystical gems which, as the name suggests, allow the user to travel through and command time. They can only be found on a magical planetoid called Little Planet, which annually appears above a body of water on the planet Mobius called Never Lake. It hovers over Never Lake for 1 month and then disappears for the remaining 11. In the game, Eggman travels to Little Planet to steal the stones and uses time travel to accomplish his usual world domination shenanigans. So maybe in the 4th film, Eggman will find one of these stones and use it to send Metal into the past to kill Sonic. Then the boys and Amy may race to collect the remaining 6 before Metal does. However, the movies don't take place on Little Planet or Mobius, they take place on Earth. The Time Stones wouldn't be there unless you significantly change their lore. So here's how they could work in the movies. Keep in mind this is purely my idea. This is not drawn from anyone else's theory, and there's no evidence that what I'm about to say is going to happen in the film. With that said, what if the Time Stones worked like Little Planet itself? What if they only appeared in a certain location for a set time frame, only to vanish until the next cycle? Maybe the Time Stones appear on a different planet every month and then disappear without a trace for the remaining 11. Maybe this year, that planet is Earth. Maybe aliens from across the galaxy try to predict where the stones will appear in the future, like how a certain character from the games tries to predict the future. And maybe Eggman builds technology to harness the property of each stone so that once all of them vanish, only he and Metal can travel through time afterwards, and ensure that no one can bring down the Eggman Empire for the foreseeable future. In other words, the Time Stones could be a ticking clock to race against, which not only adds tension and stakes to the story, but fits nicely with Eggman's line from the teaser. This premise could even work with Silver, who lives 200 years into the future. By then, the Time Stones could very well reappear on Earth or his home planet, giving him the chance to travel back to the past and do what he can to save his present. But alas, it seems unlikely that the stones will make it into the SCU. Like with Eggman Negative, they're too similar to something that's already established in the films. They're 7 gemstones with magical powers that come in colors of red, yellow, green, blue, and purple, just like the Chaos Emeralds. Why did Sega make 2 sets of 7 magical gemstones with the same colors and that can travel through time? Who knows? The only way I could see the stones making it into the film is if, like their lore, their appearance is drastically different from the games. One more thing before we move on from time travel objects. While we likely won't see the stones in the film, there's another means of time travel from CD that is likely to show up. In the game, the past and present version of different zones features a machine called a robot transporter, which can teleport several Batniks en masse. What's the evidence that these transporters will make it into the film? It's the army of mass-produced Metal Sonics in the 3rd film's post-credit scene. If you want to teleport that many robots into the past, transporters would be an efficient way to do so. Remember how I said that maybe Eggman builds a machine to harness the properties of the Time Stones or Chaos Emeralds? That machine could be a transporter. Perhaps before attacking Sonic in the park, the chief model of Metal is sent back in time to install several transporters around the world. That way, the army can travel from the future to swarm and overwhelm everyone in the past, ensuring Eggman's control over humanity in a short amount of time. Now we've reached our final question about time travel and movie 4. Will Amy be from the future? This rumor began with a tweet from Sonic City that cited leaker Daniel Rickman. According to Rickman, Amy is from a future where Eggman and Metal have taken over the world, and she travels to the past to prevent this reality from happening. To bring it back to the Terminator, Amy would be like Kyle Reese, who ends up falling in love with Sarah Connor, believe it or not. How accurate are Rickman's leaks in general? It appears he's not much more reliable than any other alleged Hollywood insider. Some have said that the way Amy effortlessly took out all of those metal Sonics in the third film's post-credit scene is evidence that she's from this bad future, because it suggests that she has a lot of experience fighting Eggman's robots. However, Amy has been able to hold her own against Eggman's robots since at least 1998's Sonic Adventure, despite never being from a dystopian future. But even if we had a precedent or strong evidence for this rumor, should Amy be from the future? I would say no. A hard no, in fact, for a few reasons. First, and I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing this, but that's Silver's thing. Yes, 06 is not the first Sonic game or story to have time travel. Yes, Silver does not have a monopoly on time travel stories. But the specific premise of a character being from a future that is so messed up they go back in time to change it for the better is unique to Silver. Let's assume Silver will make it to the movies eventually. If so, there's not really a way to have both him and Amy share this backstory and motivation without undermining Silver in some way. Say the two know each other and go into the past during the fourth movie to fix the future. We already know why that's definitely not happening, since that would bloat the cast and make the story an underwhelming mess. Say this is only Amy's story in this film, while Silver is set to do the same thing or something similar in a future movie. If that happens, Silver will just be a cheap rehash of Amy, even though this is his story. Otherwise, the filmmakers will have to create an entirely new conflict for Silver when there's really no need to. Or they might decide Silver is not worth the effort and choose not to adapt him at all, which is incredibly unfair. Imagine Sonic Team spending the last 20 years pretending as if you don't exist because you premiered in a less than ideal game. And then when there's a chance to have your reputation skyrocket through another medium, you have to share or possibly give up your story to another character. But more importantly, this rumor ignores important parts of Amy's character. While Amy has never been from the future in the games, comics, or TV shows, she has always been interested in predicting it. Amy's most well-known hobby is fortune-telling, specifically tarot card reading.
For a while now, I've been using my fortune cards to perform divinations. That means that as I draw the cards, I read into their meanings and make predictions on what the future might hold.
This hobby isn't just a trivial quirk like Tails' astrophobia or Shadow's love of coffee beans. It's what drives Amy's adventurous spirit. In CD, Amy travels to Little Planet because a tarot card supposedly told her that she was going to have a destined encounter with a great hero there. And what happens on Little Planet? She meets Sonic, who saves her after she's kidnapped by Metal. Ever since, she's been in love with the Blue Blur and has joined him on countless adventures. Were it not for Amy's desire to see the future, she might not have made a lifelong friend who inspires her to be her best self. That's the basis for Amy's character right there. She already has a connection to the future that's unique to her. Not to mention that Amy's fortune-telling could easily fit into Movie 4's plot. How was she in the right place and time to save Sonic in that post-credit? She could have predicted that a lifelong friend and his world were in trouble and that she was destined to come to his aid. There are other problems with Amy being from the future as well. In almost all games beyond the classic era, Amy is part of the main cast. Best understood as Team Sonic's unofficial fourth member, she's either right by Sonic's side along with Tails and Knuckles, or doing her own thing, but still willing to lend a hand. However, this can't happen in the movies if Amy is from the future, because once everything is resolved and a good future is secured, she'll just go back to her own timeline. Some have suggested that she could just stay in the present, but why would she do that? I doubt Amy would want to join Team Sonic so badly that she'd give up living in the good future she fought so hard for. And to those who say she would stay because she'll be deeply in love with Sonic at this point, I'd prefer if Amy didn't return to that era where she was willing to disregard everything around her for the sake of her crush. Plus, if Amy is the product of a bad future, and said future ceases to exist by the film's end, couldn't that mean she'll cease to exist, no matter which timeline she's in? This is one of those temporal paradoxes that make time travel such a headache for writers. However, this issue, and all the others mentioned above, could easily be avoided if Amy were, as always, from the present. She doesn't have to mooch off Silver's story, she can still romantically pursue Sonic without potentially screwing herself out of existence, and she can be part of the main cast from here on out. Anyway, we can go on and on about how time travel will affect Sonic 4's story, but our best guesses so far are as follows. The Metal Sonic army that tried to kill Sonic was sent by Eggman from the future. Eggman survived the Eclipse Cannon explosion by being teleported back to Earth via Shadow's chaos energy. This allows him to rule the world as its Tech Bro Emperor in the distant future. The characters will time travel by using, in order of likelihood, Chaos Emeralds, Transporters, or Time Stones. Silver won't appear in the fourth film, but if time travel is in fact possible in this universe, he could show up in a sequel. And while it's highly unlikely that Amy is from the future, her desire to predict what's yet to come may lead her to become one of its saviors. Thanks for watching.